Hello, my name's Justin LeClue, and I'm here today with
Will Sloan.
And you're listening to The Important Cinema Club. And today, are you ready to laugh? Because we're going to laugh talking about Stephen Chow.
Who is Stephen Chow?
Stephen Chow is the Jim Carrey of Hong Kong, if Jim Carrey's career didn't stall after about 5 movies. And he was also forced to make hundreds of films, usually under mafia involvement. In Stephen Chow's case, the Triads.
Okay.
And Stephen Chow, you may know him from films like Shaolin Soccer, Kung Fu Hustle, maybe CJ7, and I think that's pretty much it as far as North American penetration goes.
And the Tricky Master.
Oh, yeah. Oh, the classic Tricky Master.
Or you may know him from The Mermaid, which until recently was China's highest-grossing film of all time.
But he did not star in that one. He directed it. Mm-hmm. He actually hasn't starred in a movie in almost a decade, if not more than that.
So Stephen Chow was in the 90s the biggest draw at the Hong Kong box office, more so even than Jackie Chan. Mm-hmm. Jackie Chan had more prestigious films, he had bigger budget films, his movies were bigger events, but Stephen Chow just was churning out movies over and over again. Every one of them, without exception, was a blockbuster. He's also somebody who, when Western cult circles were discovering Hong Kong cinema, Stephen Chow was not one of the people they were discovering because he was regarded as very colloquial, very Hong Kong specific.
I think I came a little bit later than the 90s wave of Hong Kong cult appreciation because one of the first Hong Kong movies that I saw when I first started going to DVD stores was Shaolin Soccer. It's the first one that I bought. And I remember I was looking for it. It cost a ridiculous amount of money, probably something like $35. And I treasured that DVD. Like, there was an error that would happen when I would play it, and I would put it in slow motion just so that little error would disappear. And I think that Shaolin Soccer is one of those amazing movies that is a perfect introduction to Hong Kong as a genre, in the broadest of terms, in the sense that, like, the craziness they do, their comedic sensibilities, and their leading men in people like Stephen Chow.
And it's very infused with all the lore of Hong Kong cinema history. Like, it's got a Bruce Lee character.
Mm-hmm. It's got, like, kung fu, it's got wire work, it's got all the things that people would associate with Hong Kong going forward. Even though that, while Shaolin Soccer was a huge hit in Hong Kong, I believe Miramax bought it and sat on it for, like, years and years and years.
Well, I remember seeing a trailer for Shaolin Soccer at a movie theater. I went to see Spy Kids 3D. And
I saw that one as well, I believe for my birthday. I was much too old.
I was a sucker for 3D movies at that age. And there was a trailer for Shaolin Soccer, but it was going to be a dubbed version that was like 30 minutes shorter than the Hong Kong version. And I think somebody raised hell about it, and it just sat on the shelf for years until it got a cursory theatrical distribution and then was released on DVD.
For a long time, there were so many talks it was going to be a big release that Stephen Chow was going to dub his own voice Jackie Chan style in the English version. And then I don't know what happened. Maybe they did some test screenings and didn't work out as well as they expected, and then it just kind of got dumped.
There was definitely an attempt to make Stephen Chow a thing in North America. Kung Fu Hustle, which for a time was the most popular movie of all time in Hong Kong, got a wide theatrical release here, but it was one of the last of the Hong Kong movies to get a wide theatrical release.
I saw Kung Fu Hustle in theaters with my dad, so it was in every theater then, if I was able to see it in Ottawa while I was living there.
And in fact, after that, Stephen Chow was offered the Green Hornet movie to direct.
That's true.
But let's get to that in a bit. Let's start at the beginning. Why is Stephen Chow funny? Because, and I'm asking this because you're somebody who, you told me you've seen almost all his movies.
Yes.
When I was getting into Hong Kong cinema in my teenage years, the comedies seemed very inaccessible to me.
Yeah, well, they're very foreign to North American viewers.
And in particular, Stephen Chow had a style of comedy called Mo Lai Tao, which translates more or less into makes no sense. Very heavy on puns and anachronisms and sort of like local references.
Yeah, a way that I would describe it is it's like Zucker Brothers style humor, like Airplane or stuff like that, where anything goes, but it tends to rely a lot on Cantonese wordplay.
So I always regarded Stephen Chow as kind of, he's not for me. And then even seeing some of his movies, because I liked Shaolin Soccer and Kung Fu Hustle enough to inevitably like go into the back catalog, he was an acquired taste for me because those two movies were made with a global audience in mind, you know.
Yeah, if you read a book like David Bordwell's Planet Hong Kong, he talks about Stephen Chow quite a bit in it, and the way that they used to make movies in the 90s, which was just churn them out as quickly as possible. They open at midnight, that's like the first preview screening, and they play for a week or two and then they close. Now, if we're going to go way back to how Stephen Chow got started, he did get started as a TV show host. You'll read that in every one of his biographies, for a show called Space Shuttle 430. And I found clips of it online. It's not as funny as I was hoping it would be, or as nonsensical as the style would become. But from that role, he actually became more of a real actor. He actually got nominated for a Golden Horse Award, which is kind of like the Hong Kong Oscars, for a Best Supporting Actor in Final Justice, which is a completely straight role for him. And he did that for a long time. He was even in a John Woo movie, Just Heroes, one of John Woo's more forgotten films, because it was mostly done as a fundraiser to raise money for his mentor, Chang Che. And it wasn't until Stephen Chow starred in a movie called All for the Winner that stuff kind of changed.
And that movie has an interesting history because one of Chow Yun-fat's signature roles in Hong Kong was a movie called God of Gamblers. And he didn't want to do the sequel, so the producer Eng Si-yoon, who is kind of like the Roger Corman of Hong Kong.
Yeah, he's the one who, as some trailers that we saw have put it, created Jackie Chan.
Yeah.
Because he produced Snake and the Eagle's Shadow.
He also launched a lot of other people. Van Damme started with him. But Eng Si-yoon had a script to go for a rip-off movie called All for the Winner. Got Stephen Chow to do it. It became even more popular than God of Gamblers.
And what you see in All for the Winner, which is fun, like I got it on DVD as well because it was like the text of Stephen Chow, is a takeoff of God of Gamblers that almost makes no sense if you haven't seen God of Gamblers, because All for the Winner references it over and over again. Like Stephen Chow is trying to imitate Chow Yun-fat from that movie, except the difference here is that Stephen Chow has psychic powers, but he's also playing one of the kind of stock characters he kept going back to, which is a mainland Chinese bumpkin who's actually really good at what he does.
And this movie was so popular that eventually the All for the Winner series and the God of Gamblers series converged.
Which is insane, because what ended up happening was the director of God of Gamblers, Wong Jing, took Stephen Chow from that movie and put him in God of Gamblers 2 as the same character who met up with a bunch of other characters from the God of Gamblers series.
Following All for the Winner, Stephen Chow had a long period of just churning out comedies.
He made 8 films in 1991, starring roles.
That's mind-boggling. He worked with, Johnny To back when Johnny To was just a journeyman director. Gordon Chan. He worked a lot with Wong Jing, a favorite of yours. Wong Jing is like the schlockmeister of Hong Kong cinema.
Yeah, if somebody makes something that's successful, Wong Jing will then rip it off while putting some stars in it, like Andy Lau or Jackie Chung. He's most famous for making City Hunter, the Jackie Chan film that Jackie Chan has completely disowned, but which is tons of fun. And then making a whole film that's a giant fuck you to Jackie Chan called High Risk.
And Wong Jing is somebody who is held in very low regard in Hong Kong cinema fan circles, but I know you're a fan. And,
I'm a huge fan.
And, I enjoy Wong Jing movies too, because they're wacky, they're
cheap, dumb.
They're dumb, have a lot of shit in them, and it's like, if you like Hong Kong movies, how can you not have some affection for Wong Jing? Because he's so much of what Hong Kong cinema is.
And Wong Jing made one of the craziest Stephen Chow films, which is Tricky Brains, a film where Stephen Chow plays a prank master?
He's the world's #1 tricks expert. It's kind of like Dirty Work.
Kind of, except instead of Norm Macdonald and Artie Lang, it's like Stephen Chow and Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
Because Andy Lau is in the movie.
Yeah, so the plot of the film, which I saw this week on Justin's recommendation, is that Stephen Chow, as this tricks expert, he'll play tricks on anyone, gets hired by a corrupt businessman to oust his rival, Andy Lau, from the company that he works at, and also to break up Andy Lau's relationship with the fragrant Rosamund Kwan, who he wants to get with. So Stephen Chow poses as Andy Lau's long-lost brother, and then he tries to fuck him up and embarrass him through all sorts of wacky shenanigans, like he tries to get him to drink an aphrodisiac cola.
Yep, that's right. Tries to get him to go into the ladies' washroom.
Shenanigans.
Or, most famously, he tries to ruin a date for Andy Lau by pretending that he has AIDS.
Oh my god. So Wong Jing is the poet of AIDS jokes.
Oh my god.
Every Wong Jing movie from this era has extensive use of AIDS jokes. Wong Jing is a very bad man.
He's a very bad man.
He's sexist, he's racist, he's,
famously worked with the triads a lot, and at one point he pissed them off so badly that they knocked all of his teeth out.
And now, of course, he's, in tight with the People's Republic government.
Ugh, God. But, after I recommended it to you, it is a very difficult movie to get into, especially in the first, chunk, where you're like, all right, I don't know if I'm getting all these jokes, because one of them just involves a character pretending to have a seizure when a particular word is said.
The Stephen Chow movies usually have at least one scene where there's it's almost like a rap. Characters will talk to each other in a very heightened, stylized, rhyming way, and the subtitles just seem like normal dialogue to me. And that's when I know, okay, this scene is not for me.
And you can see in Tricky Brain, Stephen Chow's kind of go-to comedic stylings, which is he likes to deadpan a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
He'll talk in a straight monotone, but then he'll react like a big rubber-faced reaction to something else.
This gets back to my question about whether or not Stephen Chow, or why you find Stephen Chow funny, or why anyone finds Stephen Chow funny, because I like him. I love him as a director. I'm fine with him as an actor, but the fact that he hasn't appeared in any movies recently and he seems to have gone full-time behind the scenes doesn't break my heart, because he just seems
it breaks my heart so much.
To me, he's like kind of an affable guy, but I don't feel any love for him that I feel for Jackie or Sammo.
Stephen Chow has that kind of amazing face that he's like a leading man, right?
Yeah.
Because he's handsome. Yeah. He idolizes Bruce Lee. He wishes he could be a martial arts star, which popped up in all his movies. But at the same time, he just makes fun of himself all the time. He's often the butt of the jokes. And with that comes the fact that all of his movies have the Stephen Chow stamp. No matter what director it is, Stephen Chow has cultivated a brand of comedy that really appeals to me. It's a mixture of big acting, deadpan performance, and most importantly, these crazy visual punchlines. Stephen Chow, as a performer, knows how to play and sell these big visual gags that are everywhere in his pictures. Him as an actor, director, writer, and just artist kind of exemplifies what I love about Hong Kong cinema, which is that it can do anything and it can put it up on screen for the simple use of a laugh. For example, Tricky Brains, which we just talked about, has a climax where Stephen Chow and another tricky master just do pranks at each other that are massive over this mansion just filled with partygoers. And Stephen Chow just knows how to sell that. So it's not just him as a director, but also him as an actor that can pull these things off. Principally in very violent ways. Because if there's one thing that you'll see in Stephen Chow films, especially the ones that he co-directs, is the level of brutal violence to the gags. Yeah. And that's why they're funny. You just watched From Beijing with Love, which is a Stephen Chow kind of parody of James Bond films.
This was one of the Stephen Chow movies I saw, 10 or 15 years ago when I was getting into Hong Kong movies. And on this viewing, I expected to love it. I was a little disappointed by it on this viewing. You love it.
Oh, I love that movie so much. I mean,
it's fun.
It's I can describe a gag, and the people listening won't find it funny, but just imagine how it is on screen, where someone is trying to assassinate Stephen Chow, and so she pulls a gun out of his bag, points it at him, fires, and then she gets hit by a bullet in the shoulder. And Stephen Chow gets up and goes, "Oh, you just used my trick gun. It fires backwards instead of forwards." So then he turns around to go do something. The girl points the gun at Stephen Chow again, turns it backwards, fires, and then it hits her in the shoulder again. And Stephen Chow stands up and goes, "Oh, that's my double trick gun that it shoots backwards, then forwards." And she's standing there with giant bullet wounds that are leaking blood.
Okay, that's funny.
Yes.
And it's funny because of how, deadpan he plays it. There are a lot of kind of tired, spy spoof gags. There's the scene where Stephen Chow is showing her all of his gadgets, and one of them is it's like a hairdryer, but it's actually a razor, and here's a razor, and it's actually a hairdryer. And he plays it well. He plays it totally dead.
I mean, that's classic, like, get smart bullshit, right?
Yeah.
But it's funny. And
yeah, it's fine. I'm underrating the movie a little bit here. I think just because I had such high hopes for it going in. And it's also brutally violent, which is something that I actually remember catching me off guard when I saw it the first time, and did again this time.
I mean, that's something that Chow still goes back to, even in his newer movies like The Mermaid. Like, it's so shockingly violent. And I think that ties into the fact that he's kind of obsessed with making a movie that's comedic and as well as dramatic, and that violence is often something that he leans into to try to make things feel more serious. For example, something like God of Cookery, which you just watched, which is part of, I think, the holy trinity of Chow films: God of Cookery, Shaolin Soccer, Kung Fu Hustle. Yeah. When you mention him, everybody mentions those.
And it's definitely in the transition period for him, because you directed me to an article by Grady Hendrix for Film Comment about the producer Jeff Lau. And Grady Hendrix argues that Jeff Lau is the one who changed Stephen Chow.
Yeah, he directed All for the Winner, the one that skyrocketed Stephen Chow to mega popularity.
But then after All for the Winner, Stephen Chow churned out all these movies with Wong Jing, all these sort of triad-funded movies.
Yeah.
In fact, fun fact, just to digress, Stephen Chow, during the handover, tried to emigrate to Canada, but he was not allowed into Canada because of his triad connections.
Yeah, he tried twice.
Yeah.
And both times they turned him away.
Which is crazy.
And, like, Stephen Chow, I don't know what went into him making all these movies. Like, obviously, someone was holding a gun to his back,
the
forcing
triads
him to.
were such a huge part of Hong Kong cinema in the early 90s. I don't think they are so much anymore, because Hong Kong cinema just isn't that profitable anymore.
And it's mostly mainland Chinese cinema, where it's tough for the triads to get a foothold in that, even though they did attack Michael Bay when he was on the set for Transformers 4.
In fact, I think in the 90s, one of the only people who was just totally invulnerable from the triads was Jackie Chan, because his movies were too expensive and he just had too much institutional protection.
Well, don't forget that Jackie Chan was contractually obligated by good friend Jimmy Wang Yu in appearing in the Island of Fire movie.
That seems to be Jackie Chan's like only triad obligation movie from the 90s.
And so Jeff Lau has directed some of the funniest Stephen Chow films, but most famously he made a picture called A Chinese Odyssey.
It's a 2-part movie.
Yes, it is. So it's like 3 hours long.
And this is the one from 1995, after all those Wong Jing movies that sent Stephen Chow to where he is today, making more well-rounded, more mature movie.
And I think that A Chinese Odyssey, which is unfortunately a little bit difficult to get into North America, I think there's a Chinese Blu-ray that was released back in the day. I could only get it in a washed-out version with burnt-in subtitles. But I would have to say that not only does it capture the Stephen Chow magic that I love so much, but it's his most successful at being a dramatic movie. Not gonna lie, tears spring from my eyes when I watch the end of that picture. And it's actually a classical retelling of a Monkey King story, which they've been mining in China for the last, like, decade.
In fact, one of Stephen Chow's recent movies is that story, Journey to the West. He did a big budget mainland comedy based on it.
But other than Jeff Lau, there's one other filmmaker that Stephen Chow worked with a lot in the late 90s and kind of defined his style going forward, who was Lik Chi Lee. He's the one that co-directed Shaolin Soccer. He also co-directed From Beijing with Love. He co-directed King of Comedy, which is another Stephen Chow film. And he made God of Cookery with Chow. And you got a chance to watch God of Cookery this week.
Yeah, another one that I saw, 10 or 15 years ago. I found it thoroughly enjoyable.
Yeah.
It's got lots of fun stuff in it. Stephen Chow plays the self-proclaimed god of cookery, a master chef in Hong Kong who's very arrogant. And in his arrogance, he lends his name to a franchise of bad restaurants, and he's betrayed by one of his employees who usurps him to become the new god of cookery. So now humbled on the streets, Stephen Chow joins forces with a lowly street vendor named Sister Turkey, played by the great Karen Mok,
who has uglified herself in a weird trend for a lot of Stephen Chow films around that period.
With crazy teeth. And by the way, I think Karen Mok is way funnier than Stephen Chow is in this movie.
I would probably agree. Stephen Chow doesn't have that much to work with in this film.
He's a straight man. So he aligns with her and her triad gang, and they market this new product called explosive pissing beef balls.
Yeah, that's right.
Which rockets him back to the top. And then the last act of this movie takes place at the big God of Cookery competition, where Stephen Chow,
Now humbled.
now humbled, but now back to a higher place.
Yeah, that's right. Now he has gray hair.
Now he's in a higher spiritual place, has to engage in a kung fu cookery competition with his old employee.
I think that what made me not like the movie that much when I first saw it, and even watching it now, was high expectations.
Yeah.
When you say like kung fu cookery, you're like, oh boy, that doesn't really happen until the last act.
Well, also it's like, yeah, the middle section of this movie drags.
Yeah.
And also you're watching it through the lens of what he would do after this. Like, this movie leads to Shaolin Soccer and Kung Fu Hustle, and you want it to be as funny as those, and it's not.
This film wasn't as successful when it came out in Hong Kong, I believe. And I think one of the reasons was that Stephen Chow was tackling his own public persona in the film. Because the character, in classic Jackie Chan fashion, is called Stephen Chow, and the God of Cookery is an arrogant egomaniac who thinks he's the best and everybody sucks. Which, if you've read interviews with people that have worked with Stephen Chow, that's how they all feel about him. Stephen Chow is not an easy man to work with, and this has been said over and over again from people like Johnny To, who said like, oh, I don't really want to comment on Stephen Chow because enough people have attacked him. And even Wang Jing said like, yeah, I don't want to talk about it because he's been, taken down enough. Wang Jing said that.
What is the problem with Stephen Chow?
Just a giant egomaniac. And I feel that he believes that everything that he does is right, and that he doesn't let any dissenting voices around him. And I think that can be seen in the way that his career kind of went after he was not forced to make movies anymore. Because he worked obviously really hard on Kung Fu Hustle, and it came out and was a huge hit. And now there's this weight of expectation on him.
And now movies are coming out from him at a Kubrickian pace.
Absolutely.
It's like one every 5 years.
And from what I hear is that he will work on a joke over and over and over and over again until it's funny and he believes it's the best it can be. But what you get is something that's just kind of there. It doesn't have that spark that his other movies have that obviously felt improvised on the day.
Yeah, well, the Wang Jing movies have an energy that is all their own. But what I do know is I think The Mermaid is a very, very funny movie.
It is very funny.
Particularly the scene that I think about all the time is when there's that, you know the one I'm talking about.
Yeah, an octopus man.
An octopus man is posing as a Chinese chef, and then some other chefs start like knifing at his octopus tentacles.
And then he has to cook himself for the people while in extreme pain to stay undercover. And I think that's probably one of the perfect Stephen Chow gags where like it's someone has to pretend not to do something while they're in extreme pain. There's a famous joke in Chinese Odyssey where Stephen Chow thinks he's invisible and where the people he's trying to sneak by keep lighting him on fire in the crotch and where his friends keep like stomping at his crotch over and over again until it just gets more and more funny.
But these people can call him an egomaniac, but what I know is when he took the reins, the movies that he controlled, they're the ones that are the best. They're the most imaginative. Something like Kung Fu Hustle. Kung Fu Hustle is like what I want those earlier Chow movies to be. Just like an extreme live action cartoon.
Yeah, I can understand where you're coming from, but at the same time, I do feel they're almost a little too fabricated in the way that they play out. And his emphasis on, like a lot of filmmakers, on CGI kind of robs some of the magic of something like a Chinese Odyssey has, which is all practical.
I felt that about Journey to the West, one of his more recent movies. It kind of evaporated from my mind right after I saw it.
It's not as funny as you want it to be.
Yeah.
And the one that he produced was Choi Hark after the sequel, Journey to the West, The Demons Strike Back, is even less funny because like it's so calculated and you're not sure where the jokes are. And which is different than his earlier films where I watch them and a lot of scenes will play out and I'll go, that is a parody of something that I don't understand, like a commercial or something. But it doesn't matter because they're moving so fast. I could just move on to the next set piece.
I watched one more movie for this podcast, his 1999 film King of Comedy, not to be confused with the Martin Scorsese film.
Yeah.
This was his attempt to go in an even more mature direction, kind of a sentimental comedy drama where he plays an extra in the Hong Kong film industry, a background player who really takes his craft seriously and wants to do serious drama. And he even starts a theater troupe so that he can do a classic Chinese play, The Thunderstorm. And he becomes acquainted with a local courtesan played by Cecilia Chung, who wants him to help her act better so that she can be more attractive to potential customers. And it becomes a bit of a romantic drama, but the romantic drama is interspersed throughout by scenes of unspeakably broad comedy.
Well, don't forget, good man Jackie Chan shows up in the movie
makes a
as an
cameo?
extras. Massively over-the-top parodies of Hong Kong cinema, whether it be John Woo or
Bruce Lee. There is a scene where Stephen Chow fiddles with a small child's penis in this movie.
right.
So I don't even know. This movie, it's not hard to find this movie, but be careful because like there is legit child pornography in this movie.
You know, I know that you weren't a huge fan of it, and King Comedy is actually considered a little bit lesser on the Chow scale.
Yeah, I didn't particularly like it either, and I don't know if I just needed to be there in Hong Kong at the time. None of the emotional beats hit for me. It felt like an awkward melding of parts.
But it also ends with a incredibly brutal crime climax that comes out of nowhere.
Yeah, so the whole movie...
Love it.
The movie was just peculiar to me. So let's get back to The Green Hornet, which was supposed to be his first American film.
And it was announced, Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg, his writing partner, got Chow on board. He was going to direct the film. He was going to co-star as Kato. And what ended up happening? Nothing. According to Seth Rogen on a commentary track, Stephen Chow just stopped returning their calls.
Well, it seems like a bad combination because Seth Rogen's brand of comedy and Stephen Chow's brand of comedy could not be more different. I do remember reading an interview with Rogen where he said that Stephen Chow had an idea where Kato would insert a microchip into the Green Hornet's head where he would be able to control him.
That sounds like a great gag.
And frankly, I would have rather seen Stephen Chow's Green Hornet.
Yeah, because all of you remember Michel Gondry's Green Hornet? No, of course you don't.
Well, the Green Hornet's another movie that was just like a weird mix of sensibilities. Like they should have just gone all out.
With Kevin Smith's Green Hornet like it was supposed to be.
Well, like they should have just done like, you know, the Apatow Green Hornet instead of trying to get some arty guy to direct it.
Yeah, it was a weird, you know, mixture that just didn't pay off at all. So if anybody listening here is like, I don't know, what Stephen Chow film should I watch if I've watched The Holy Trinity already? Well, I have a top 10 list, so get your pen and paper out, and I'm going to say it really fast. So first off, Chinese Odyssey 1 and 2, Jeff Lau's films, probably the greatest all-around Stephen Chow films. I'm cheating by putting two movies, but they're very similar to each other. From Beijing with Love, which we talked about, and also Forbidden City Cop, where Stephen Chow plays a cop that gets involved with all these flying, like, swordsman people, but he can't do it, which ends with one of the greatest climaxes in cinema history. Out of the Dark, the ultimate version of violent Stephen Chow, a rare film that he made for the Shaw Brothers, that was also directed by Jeff Lau, and is a horror comedy where, like, people get cut in half and they're dealing with ghosts and stuff like that. Tricky Brains, which we already mentioned. Love on Delivery, which is probably in my top Stephen Chow movies. It's so funny. I love it so much. And the concept is Stephen Chow saves the girl of his dreams while in a Garfield mask.
Oh my God.
And she doesn't know who saved her, so he has to be this Garfield vigilante.
I'm adding this to my Letterboxd watch list right now.
King of Comedy, which Will mentioned. God of Gambler 3, Back to Shanghai. Not to be confused with God of Gambler 3, The Beginning, which is also directed by Wong Jing, but a completely different movie. In this one, Stephen Chow goes back in time while having a psychic fight to Shanghai in, I think, the 30s or the 40s, where he starts a McDonald's and has a musical number about it. Flirting Scholar, which is a really fun one.
I've seen that one. I liked it.
Yeah, Magnificent Scoundrels, which is a con man comedy starring Stephen Chow. And Royal Tramp, which is a wuxia parody directed by Wong Jing. From this list, I think you get like a good mix of them all, and a lot of them directed by Lee Chi Lee, the guy who made Shaolin Soccer, God of Cookery, and then was abandoned by Stephen Chow, which is a thing that, like, when you talk about Chow as a kind of jackass character, there's another actor he worked with in every movie called In Man Tat. He's in Shaolin Soccer. He's in almost every movie that Chow made in the 90s. And then suddenly when Kung Fu Hustle came around, and Tat said, Chow just didn't call me. He just didn't ask me to be in it. So, and they haven't worked together since.
So, do we have any letters this week?
We do have one letter. You can send us letters at importantcinemaclubpodcast@gmail.com. Questions, comments, Stephen Chow related inquiries. We will take them. Stephen Chow, if you're listening, we'd love to have you on the podcast. I actually saw him in an interview, I think it was the 90s, with Jonathan Ross, who did the incredible Strange Film Show. It was a son of TV show. And Chow in it is very Peter Sellers-like. Like, you know how they're very deadpan when they talk. And at one point, Johnson Ross goes, "You must be very popular with the ladies." And Stephen Chow goes, "Oh, no, I'm not very popular with the ladies." Which I'm like, come on! You're one of the biggest stars in Hong Kong.
You must be very popular with the ladies. I can just imagine Jonathan Ross saying that.
So, this letter is from Kyle Cox. Hashtag Important Cinema Club Nation Plebeian. It goes, "Finally, I have accomplished the Important Cinema Club Nation introduction process by listening to your entire podcastography, and I gotta say that I genuinely enjoyed every single episode."
Well, thanks. I would not want to spend that much time with myself.
"My name is Kyle Cox, and over the past 4 months, I've been hiking the Continental Divide Trail. As grand and rewarding as this journey has been, it doesn't pair well with my love of all things cinema. However, it does provide me with plenty of free ear time. You two have played a major role in helping me through this arduous adventure, and have seriously aided me in reestablishing my excitement and appreciation for all types of movies. Not just a schlock hole that I found myself going down."
Now I feel like I've traveled the Continental Divide with him. From now on, whenever anyone asks, "What's the longest trip you've ever made?" that's what I'll say.
Yeah, because we were right there in his ear, probably the entire way.
He was the third guy in the room with us, you know?
"I've only had the opportunity to begin concocting a list for movies to watch and books to read for when I slink back into the real world, but man, is that list long now, with my newly purchased Teddy Bomb Blu-ray at the top of it."
Wow.
Thank you, Kyle Cox.
A man after your own heart.
"I did have the opportunity to catch Yankee Doodle Dandy on TCM in a hotel, the proper viewing place. Fucking hell, man, that goddamn Over There song was stuck in my head for weeks. I suppose I'll have to watch Detour, or the rest of the ICC Nation will kick me out. I'd like to hear if you have any opinions on trailers. The hype, the false promises, the awe-inspiring moments you may have experienced as a kid. I've been avoiding most of them as of late because they can give away too much, but it's hard to deny the excitement that a well-cut, simple trailer can provide." I loved trailers when I was a kid.
Oh, me too.
I think we've talked about before that like TCM were one of those channels that would play the same 5 trailers every day.
Oh, it was,
the Movie Network.
Yeah, that's right. And so we saw like the trailer for
Bordello of Blood.
Bordello of Blood Fled with
I was
Stephen Baldwin.
obsessed with Fled. I wrote an illustrated short story in class about Fled.
Because Fled looked so grown up.
And have I seen the movie? No, I haven't.
No, neither have I. The American President was another trailer that I saw a lot.
Which started Will's love for Aaron Sorkin.
I'm still up for seeing trailers when I go see a movie. You know, it's kind of fun to see when you go see a big blockbuster. It's kind of fun to see blockbuster trailers. Like when you go to the art house, you're gonna get art house trailers.
Yeah, and you see like that logo come up. I'm not gonna name any names, but I mouthed something to Will, and you go like, ugh, another one of these.
Yeah. What I really want is like a trailer for a superhero movie, so I can get all the good bits. I can get like lots of stuff flying around, popular, fun shit.
Oh, I watch all the trailers that they come out right when they come out, and I have no friends that share that with me. As far as what I enjoy when I watch them, don't give me the whole movie, as in like beat by beat story wise. Just give me a bunch of abstract images that just look like fun, or give me scenes that are not even in the movie just to fuck with me.
So the best trailer moments of my life were in 1995 when I went to see Free Willy 2. A trailer for Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls came on screen.
Oh my god, he's back.
Well, because the trailer began with something like Africa, the last untamed civilization. No man would dare traverse Africa. No man. And then the guy takes off his voodoo mask. But Ace Ventura.
Right, you're like, what?
Exactly. And my other great trailer moment was seeing the trailer for Godzilla 2000 before X-Men.
I think one of the trailers that probably blew my mind the most was Power Rangers the movie. Because when I saw that trailer, I was like, whoa. Like, they're on the big screen now, and it didn't look like the TV show.
It looked bigger. It looked slicker.
Yeah. So that was kind of like earth-shattering for me. But which is funny because the trailers we're talking about are only related to other pop culture that we know.
Yeah.
Like, it's difficult that a trailer in itself introduces a concept and gets us so jazzed by it just from that.
If I were to choose the best trailers of all time, if we're going to assume that trailers are an art form.
Yeah, and they are.
I think that, so obviously the Citizen Kane trailer is very famous. But
any trailer edited by Joe Dante that has an exploding helicopter in it.
But also the Pulp Fiction trailer. You should go back and look at that trailer because it's kind of a small masterpiece. It doesn't tell you anything about the plot, but it shows you so much stimulating stuff and really conveys the feeling of the movie.
One of my favorite trailers of all time is the extended trailer of Cloud Atlas, the Wachowski brothers movie. That 5-minute trailer is so well edited and sets up all the pieces so perfectly that it was so disappointing when the movie was emotionally kind of flatlined for me.
Yeah, terrible film. Oh, also, Albert Brooks has a couple of really good trailers.
Oh my god, the real life trailer is so good.
Yeah.
It's time to pull out your 3D glasses under your seat. 3D glasses not included in every cinema.
And the Monty Python and the Holy Grail trailer is pretty funny because it's got like a Japanese narrator.
I think the thing that I would love for them to bring back in trailers is creating teasers just for the trailer.
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't involve footage from the movie, and they just don't do that anymore.
Or like I just saw the trailer for The Bellboy by Jerry Lewis, which opens with like 2 minutes of Jerry Lewis playing like the producer and playing the director.
One of the best trailers of all time is the This Is Spinal Tap trailer. Have you seen that one? Where Rob Reiner's like, I'm editing This Is Spinal Tap, but we don't have any footage to show you, so here's some footage from a documentary about cheese.
Oh, I'm a fan of the trailer for, I can just go on all day about this, but the trailer for the Sylvester Stallone porn film Italian Stallion.
Wait, how does that go?
So it was filmed as Party at Kitty and Studs in the early 70s, but then after he became famous, they re-released it as Italian Stallion, and it starts with this sort of porno personality called Gail Palmer, who was alleged to have directed porn movies in the 70s, but she was actually a front for other people. But it opens with her in an editing booth, and she goes, "Hi, I'm Gail Palmer, and I've just spent 2 weeks in the dark with everybody's biggest fantasy, Sylvester Stallone, star of Rocky, starring in his first sexually explicit film. Unfortunately, there's no sexually explicit footage that we can show you in a G-rated trailer." And then it shows you just a couple of minutes of footage of Sylvester Stallone, like, running around Central Park in an overcoat. And then it shows you an excerpt from Stallone's Playboy interview where they ask him, "What about that porno film you made?" And he says, "I was desperate. I was sleeping in the Port Authority bus station." You do a lot of weird things when you have to get out of the bus station.
That's an amazing trailer.
Yeah, it's great. It's on YouTube. You should check it out.
One of the trailers that was the biggest fuck you to an audience was the trailer for the fourth entry in the Highlander feature film series, Highlander Endgame, which was also the film that introduced Donnie Yen to the North American market, which is that it's filled with footage that was shot for a test reel to raise money for the film.
Oh, wow.
So characters are creating energy balls and throwing them. Someone gets cut in half and splits into two people. None of that happens in the movie.
Star Wars Rogue One has a ton of footage in the trailer that wasn't in the movie because half the movie was reshot.
Yeah, once the director was fired and Tony Gilroy took over uncredited and directed the rest of the picture. This letter's not done. It just goes
sorry.
into...
I was having so much fun
talking about trailers. Yeah. As for future episodes, I'd love a Charles Band or Stephen Gordon, star director of the Wonderful Ice Cream Suit episode. I think Charles Band would be really interesting to talk about. I don't think he's a very good director, but as a producer, he's been involved in a lot of stuff.
I forgot that Stewart Gordon made the Incredible Ice Cream Suit, the Joe Montana classic, which I would see the video at Blockbuster and think, who the hell would want to watch this?
I put that trailer on so many reels because it does that amazing Edward James Olmos and Edward James Olmos. The like two roles.
Yeah.
I think Stuart Gordon hasn't made one uninteresting film. I think there's value in every film that he's made. So he would definitely be someone I would like to talk about. This letter writer also says, also, I'm hoping we'll get a Schlocktober this year. Or as we like to call it, Shocktober.
Well, we will have Shocktober.
The least listened to string of episodes we've ever had.
That amazes me.
Yeah, like...
We thought we were going to get...
Like we were selling out to do horror things.
We don't do horror stuff for most of the year.
Yeah.
So we get it all out of the way in October.
The letter writer continues, thank you again, guys. This is an epic letter because he did an epic walk.
Well, he doesn't have a lot to do on the Continental Divide, so...
Thank you again, guys. You really have renewed my passion for film. Justin, keep making movies. Will, you're great. Now write a fucking book so we can throw money at you. Kyle Cox. P.S. I'll be visiting Toronto for a few days in January. Feel free to recommend some film-related spots. I had the opportunity to visit Suspect a few months before its closure and really loved that place.
Wow.
Well, it's gone now.
That just makes me so sad to think about Suspect.
What if you're a film lover and you're coming to Toronto, what do you want to visit? Go to the Royal Cinema. Hopefully you land where they're doing the Laser Blast Film Society, because I hear that's fun.
Yeah.
As far as DVDs, go to Bay Street Video. They have a huge selection.
Are there any like other kind of like weird, interesting film spots in the city? Like they're just like your standard rep houses, you know, the Review,
Yeah.
the TIFF Bell Light Box.
Yeah, I guess you can go visit there.
Oh, the Forget About It Supper Club.
People are like, what is that? You need to be deep Will Sloanophile to get that joke. As far as like I'm getting movie related places, I mean, you can go visit the gardens where the Adam McGoyan film
Chloe
was shot.
Allen Gardens. I was just at Cafe Diplomatico yesterday, where also Chloe was partly shot, and they have a signed Adam McGoyan poster for Chloe there, so you can see Adam McGoyan's autograph.
And if you're a big fan of Scott Pilgrim, all those locations are just all around the city. They're very accessible.
Well, no, they've all been bulldozed since that movie. Like, the annex is completely different.
The Pizza's still there.
Pizza's still there, but Honest Ed's is not anymore.
No, which is sad. Other than that, I can't really think of anything.
Jeez, that's bad, isn't it? Like, there ought to be more things that we can point to in Toronto.
I mean, there used to be. I mean, there's a Queen video still around.
Yeah, probably not for much longer. Well, who knows?
Who knows? Well, thank you very much for your letter, Kyle Cox. Will shall write a book, and then you can buy it.
Okay.
I may know what it is, but Will just told me not to say. All right, so what are we doing next week, Will?
We're taking it easy next week with Arnold Schwarzenegger.
It's TIFF. I'm going to be getting into screenings and Midnight Madness and working a full-time job, so I'm going to be exhausted. So I will try to do as little work as possible, so Arnold Schwarzenegger is a fun one.
I just want to watch Commando again.
Yeah, so we're going to watch Commando, Twins, and what was the other
Pumping Iron.
And Pumping Iron.
Twins by the Godfather of Toronto, Ivan Reitman.
The guy who mostly funded the TIFF Bell Light Box.
And gave us Jason Reitman and Catherine Reitman.
No, that's right.
So his legacy is secure.
I mean, Cannibal Girls, Kindergarten Cop.
My Super Ex-Girlfriend, Evolution.
Hey, that was our generation's Ghostbusters, Will. And don't forget, we have a Patreon episode this week, $5 a month, and you get 4 episodes. And we talked about Jackass.
Jackass the movie.
So if you're like, I don't know if I should pay, guys, I watched Jackass the movie this week for you and talked about it. So check that out. And my name's Justin the Glue.
I'm Will Sloan.
Thanks for listening.
Da, 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 da.
A news report came out recently that the Toronto International Film Festival is hurting a little bit this year. I think the percentage was that ticket sales dropped 15%, 20%?
At the Lightbox, their year-round ticket sales were down 27%.
Oh, that's brutal.
That hurts.
Yeah.
And in the article, Cameron Bailey and outgoing president Piers Handling, that was just announced yesterday, I think, talked about how they were trying to focus now less on film per se than in transformative experiences through film.
No, why? Why?
Because this is going to get the millennials.
You can read that as, we want to make movies an experience again. Mm-hmm. And you know what? I'd agree with that. Mm-hmm. I think that something that I've not enjoyed too much about the Lightbox is that you go, it's a very cold space, it's not very welcoming.
Well, I see the Canteen restaurant on the main floor. I see the Luma Lounge on the second floor. I think, I'm not allowed here.
Yeah, exactly.
This looks like above my pay grade. There aren't great places to congregate if you're, just a schlub like you and me.
Yeah, I mean, there's a Pizziolo around the corner, which is where we did go last time.
Yes.
But that's pretty much it. It's not
and it's too big.
Welcoming, I think. Yeah, and it's too big. Like, you've talked about that you've seen movies in, like, a cavernous theater with you and the other 6 weirdos who go and see it.
Well, like, oftentimes, like, if you see a first-run movie and it has, like, 4 showtimes a day, you're not going to pack 500 seats to see The Trip to Spain 4 times a day.
And, when the Lightbox opened, they did do a lot of cool stuff.
And they still do a lot of cool stuff.
Absolutely.
There's still, just this year I saw Le Samurai and Army of Shadows on 35mm,
They do retrospectives, and like most Cinematheques, will do all the movies, which is fascinating.
I just saw Point Break there.
Yeah, I got to see Sudden Death there.
Incredible stuff.
The Van Damme picture.
I was at that screening.
Wow, what a wonderful screening.
Oh, terrific.
Even though they dismissed it at the beginning in the introduction.
Or were you at Year of the Dragon earlier this year?
I was, on 70mm.
Wonderful.
You went recently to the Metrograph in New York.
Yeah, so this, I feel like I got some insight on perhaps what TIFF could be doing better at the Lightbox, because at the Metrograph, I've been to the Metrographs, I guess, a few times in the last 2 years, so I don't know I don't know about its business. I don't know how well it does all the time. But I know that last time I went last weekend, it was quite busy.
And for people that don't know what the Metrograph is, it's a cinema that opened in New York that's mostly deals with 35 millimeter prints, kind of long retrospectives or like themed retrospectives, and is run by a handful of people, including Eliza Ma, who used to work for TIFF. She was the personal assistant to former Midnight Madness programmer Colin Geddes back in the day.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yes, and she runs it with a handful of movie lovers, and they do really interesting stuff. But, like, was it well attended, though?
It was well attended the night I was there, and that's really all I can speak to. But I know that it was very busy. The screening I was at for Eric Romer's The Green Ray was sold out.
Wow.
It was in the smaller theater.
Yeah.
There's a smaller one and a bigger one. And the people who were there were the audience that TIFF wants at the Lightbox. It was 20-something, early 30s, very hipsterish looking people.
Well, if I made like a guess of who TIFF kind of tried to go for the last few years, it was obviously rich people, like patrons, right?
Yeah.
And you want to make going out to the movie something fancy that feels different. I mean, Cineplex has been trying to do that with like VIP rooms, stuff like that. But the truth is, those people will go out and see 2 to 3 movies a year out.
Well, Piers Handling had that great quote in the Toronto Star article where he said something like, people complain that the tickets for the festival are $28, but it's still a good entertainment dollar when you compare it to a Lady Gaga concert or an opera.
Yeah, but it's not a concert or something you see live. It's a movie.
Yeah. Oftentimes the festival appeals
How much
to
do bananas cost now? $10?
Yeah. Oftentimes the festival appeals to like rich people who want to see a celebrity, but and that's great for a couple of galas, but for the rest of the movies,
it's difficult. So, but at the Metrograph, I remember you talking about also that it felt welcoming, right?
Well, it has an interesting aesthetic because it looks kind of upscale. It looks kind of classy. I hate that word classy, but it has all this kind of like antique looking furniture around, and it has an elegant looking restaurant and a very tasteful looking snack bar with gourmet snacks and stuff.
How much are tickets?
$14 or 15.
Yeah. Expensive.
I know, standard going rate for like our 35 millimeter rep screening. It's in like an old warehouse in Chinatown, not a particularly good section of Chinatown either, and it has even though it has this kind of upscale looking furniture, it's like furniture from a lot of different vintages that's kind of thrown together. And it has this shabby chic look that makes it sort of welcoming, that makes it seem accessible for young hipster types who want to feel upscale but don't necessarily have the money to be upscale.
That's an interesting distinction between who their audience should be. Not the actual rich people, but more poorer people who want to feel rich.
Yeah.
Because they will give you money.
Yeah.
Like TIFF, like you're in the lobby and you feel like if you sit anywhere for too long, someone will be like, you gotta leave, man.
Yeah.
So what would you suggest to somewhere like the Lightbox to do differently to get more people to come?
Well, I don't know what you do with the architecture of the Lightbox.
There's nothing much you can do with that.
But it would be nice if the Luma Lounge, for instance, could feel more like a bar. Can feel more like a gathering place where people could go after the movie. Because what it looks like right now is a place that people who aren't going to the movies go to have a drink.
And I mean, I would say something that stopped me too is that like, if TIFF discounted rep screenings after a certain time or something like that, I would be more tempted to go see movies.
Well, and also if it were a DCP of a rep screening, like if I'll pay $15 for a 35 millimeter print, but am I going to pay $15 to see, Heaven's Gate on a Blu-ray?
The thing about the Lightbox as well is there's not much of an authorial voice in what's programmed.
It's very true.
And I feel like if there was more of that, then you feel like, oh, I may not know this movie, but I will go see it because I've liked other films that this person has programmed.
Well, at the Royal, and I mean, the Royal probably runs on a loss, so I don't know how perfect an example it is, but what I do know is that there is a consistent audience that goes to the Royal, and I will often go to the Royal because you and Peter have programmed something, or because Brendan Ross has programmed something in the Neon Dream series. Like, it has that personal touch that, and I often see the same people going there over and over and over again because they trust these programs, and also because the Royal cultivates like a community atmosphere, and it cultivates the sense where like
we can hang out in the lobby afterwards and talk about the movie.
You're going to see your friends, then you can go to the Monarch Tavern around the corner, and the screening will have this kind of like, people will get up and introduce the movie beforehand.
Yeah, it feels like you're involved in what's going on.
And the authorial voice at TIFF is the institutional voice, and the problem with that is it's an institutional voice. And I don't think you're going to get millennials by pandering to millennials.
What? You mean? I mean, I knew you were in the front row for the Space Jam live read, Will.
But like when I see you, for example, program something at the Royal, I know that like you're enthusiastic about it and you're going to share it to me. But when I sense that like Piers Handling is putting something on because, oh, this is what the millennials like, let's put a GIF of Anna Karina on Twitter and say Godard is bae, come see Band of Outsiders. Like I can smell bullshit.
Yeah.
Anyway, give me a job, Tiff.
You want a job?
I do.
As what?
As the guy who fixes it.
Oh, wow. Will Sloan's going to come in with no programming experience at all.
Did you hear all these ideas, Tiff?
Yeah, I mean, I have them too. You know who's replacing Piers Handling? Justin DeClue and Will Sloan, 2 white guys.
And we'll do live Important Cinema Club podcast. That's going to get the millennials in.
Yeah, they love this shit. The Toronto National Film Festival is arriving. You excited, Will?
I'm going to see a few movies, so, you know. I mean, I'm as excited as I can be for a festival where the tickets are $28.
Oh my god, it's so expensive.
So, I don't know. But you know what? If I haven't been hired for a job by TIFF at this point, I probably never will. So
I've interviewed a TIFF for a job.
Oh, yeah?
I did not get it.
Yeah, I did an interview.
Oh, we both did. So then, at this point, the TIFF representative listening to this is like, wow, they just have sour grapes now, don't they?
Or they can listen to the advice we're giving and say, hey, we want you guys to be on the TIFF Podcast Network.